Topic 3 continue discussing the operation strategy but focuses on the managing performance, while the topic 2 focuses on creating customer value. And we have 6 learning objectives for topic 3. The first 3 learning objectives focuses on the people performance in an organization or in a firm. So we talked about like how people important in operations, and we need to know the cost strategy, including the cost trained worker, the cost experience manager, the cost functional team, and also how to create an empowerment culture via the leadership, via the goal setting, and the communication. So all of the 3 learning objectives here discuss the people performance in operation strategy. So how improve the operation strategy or how make a plan of the operation strategy by considering the people performance. And the 3 learning objectives are the self-reading materials. So actually for this video, for this topic here, I will start my introduction for the 4th learning objectives, which talks about the measurements, the performance measurements, and then we will discuss the tools, for example, the balance scorecard tools and the productivity, the benchmarking, the total costing, and all of them are related to the performance according to the different performance measurements, and while evaluate those performance measurements and other performance dimensions, we analyze how to make an effective operation strategy. So the first thing I want to introduce is about the measurements. When we mention how to manage the performance, we need to know what kinds of performance we can consider about, we can focus on, and what kinds of factors or the indicators we can use to evaluate the performance in a business. So the first thing we need to think about is about the measurements, the performance measurements. The measurements we discuss here is the act of quantifying the performance for the organization units, for the physical goods, for the services, for the processes, the people, and other business activities. So we evaluate the performance while quantifying all of the indicators we can consider for the different dimensions in a business. And the table here lists the 8 dimensions of the performance measurements. So they are the 8 categories here. The first column denotes the different dimensions we can consider for the performance measurements, including the financial dimension, the customer, the market dimension, the quality, the time, the flexibility, innovation, the productivity, and sustainability. And the second column here talks about what detailed factors or the indicators we can use to evaluate the performance for those dimensions. For example, for the financial, we have a lot of the financial factors we can use to express how the financial performance is, such as the revenue, the profits, the return on assets, the ROA, and the earning per share for the stakeholders. So all of the factors listed here are the possible factors, the indicators we can use to denote, to express how the performance is. And the third column here actually are the detailed factors as an operation manager think about. The company, if we consider for the performance for an organization level, we care about what is the total revenues, how much for the earn per sharing the stakeholders can earn. But if we consider for operational level, we need to think about what is the cost for the labor, what is the cost for the materials, what is the cost of quality, how about the budget. So we have different indicators in if we consider the performance, the same performance for different level, and the same if we consider the customer and the market. For an organization level, we may consider the customer satisfaction, the retention, and the market share. What is the market share for the product in a company? But if we consider the operational level performance measures, we may need to think about how many the customer claims or the customer complaints the company received, and the different types of the relevant failure, and also how about the accuracy of the sales forecast, because if you want to take up the market share, you need to know what is the future demand in the market. So how about your accuracy of your sales forecast? This is what if we consider for the operation level, we need to consider those measures to define the performance of the customer and the market. And the third dimension is the quality. For an organization level, we need to think about the customer ratings of the goods or the services or the product recalls. But if we think for the operation level, we need to think about how many of the defects and all the how many errors you made during the whole production process. All the service representative the costly. So this is the things we need to consider about the measures in terms of the quality performance in a business. About the time when we talk about the time, we always care about the speed. We always care about the reliability. We care about what is the delivery time, what is the production time. But if we think about the operation level, we need to care about the flow precision or the cycle time. So what is the cycle time for your production? And the percent of the time meeting promised due date. We cares about the schedules. We cares about the waiting in line sometimes. And for the flexibility, in general, we have two types, the design and the value. And if you are an operation manager, you may need to think about the changeover time for your assembly lines or for your production lines, because this is the ability for you to satisfy the orders for a supply chain network, because you need to have the value flexibility to satisfy the different numbers of the orders. Or do you have the design flexibility in terms of the number of engineering change? Can you change your equipment or the machines or your engineering to satisfy the different requirements for the customers? So this is how we consider the detailed measures for both the organization level and the operation level for flexibility performance. And the innovation and the learning. The innovation talks about the new and the latest stuff. Maybe it is a unique stuff. This is the innovation. For organization level, this is the rates for the new product development. This cares about your R&D department. They focus on the employee certification because we have the learning staff. We cares about the employee turnover. And for the operation level, the measures talks about the number of patents or applications. How many patents you have if you are a manufacturing companies, like you produce the physical goods, then how many patents you have? Even though you are the service system, how many patents you have? But If you remember when we introduced the topic one, we have mentioned like the patents is one of the ways to protect the innovation for the physical goods, but the patents may not be the method to protect the service, because in the service it is difficult to protect the innovations, to protect the patents. Anyways, the number of the patent applications could be one of the indicators to express the performance of innovation. And except for the number of patent applications, we also can use the number of improvement suggestions implemented. This is a kind of ability of learning, and also like the SPC or the person of workers trained on SPC. So this is whether you have a continuous improvement process for your operations, whether you have the ability to learn something for the current process and to change to improve the process according what you have learned. So this is the innovation and learning dimension. The next one is the productivity and efficiency. So we care about the labor productivity, we care about the machine's productivity, the utilization, the the equipment utilization. And for the operation level, we care about the manufacturing yield, we care about the order fulfillment time, whether you have the high productivity in a in a supply chain network, we may need to focus on your order fulfillment time. This is also ability you can satisfy the future demand, and you can save the cost for your currently warehouse holding or for your current inventories. So this is the things we need to consider. And the last one is about sustainability. So when we mention sustainability, most of the people may think about the environmental, but the sustainability is not only focused on the environmental sustainability. We also need to focus on other aspects for the organization level, the financial, the product related, the litigations, and others. Also, the things we need to care about the sustainability. But more detailed, for operation level, we can use the measures of the percent of employees with emergency prepared preparedness training, or the discharge cost for the toxic waste, the materials. So this is what kinds of possible measures we can think about to evaluate the performance in a business for both the organization level and the operation level. But except for the possible indicators, the measures listed in the table, for the dimension, for the different dimensions, I'd like to introduce you some other things. Like for example, for the customer and market performance, I want to introduce you a system we call the customer certification measurement system. So this system help manager to quantify all the information for the customer certification, customer retention, the components, the all the compliments, all the ratings of the products or the service together, and to analyze those information to provide not only a rating of a specific goods and the services features, but also the buying behavior for a customer. So this is a very useful system to evaluate the customer performance. And for the quality, as I have mentioned, we need to care about the defects for the operational levels. But except for the measures I have mentioned, I'd like to introduce you the different types of quality we consider, the different types, in the operations like the goods and the services. For the physical goods, it is very easy to measure the quality because we have some physical performance such as the weights, the length, the different colors. So we have we always have the physical performance to express how the quality is. Then we will have an idea about how the quality performance is for the physical goods. But for the service, if we want to evaluate the service quality performance, it is harder than we measure the quality for physical goods because the service quality need to consistently meeting or exceeding the customer expectations. And more than that, the different customers have different ideas, and it is very hard to satisfy the requirements for all of customers. So even you have a good service system, but the system cannot satisfy all of the customers. So you will receive the information which denotes that the system is not good. So this is what I want to introduce about the quality performance dimensions. And about the time, except for the speed of performing a task, such as the production time, the delivery time, the wait time, the queuing time, and another very important indicators in the time performance I want to introduce to you is what we call variability of the processes. So even though we have the average time like for deliverings, but if the variation is very high, for example, if you expect like you will receive your items in 10 days, actually the company they have the process to delivery items to customer in 10 days. But for company A, if they have the variation, which means the plus or minus 2 days. So they have a range for the A to 12. So the customer may receive the item in 8 days or in 12 days. So this is the company A. And for the company B, it also have the 10 days. The average delivery time is also 10 days, but the variation is plus or minus 5 days, which means the customer may receive their item in 5 days or in 15 days. So the variation is different for both of these two companies. And the thing is, most of the customers they may prefer to choose company A because the variation is lower than company B. And this is what I want to introduce to you about the time. So we need to consider about the variability of the processes. If you are able to complete a task in 5 days, then try to monitor, try to plan, try to analyze what kinds of process you can improve to make sure most of the process will be completed in 5 days. So this is the point, and this is the things the managers need to consider about. And if we for the operation level, this is the things the managers need to fix it. But we consider for the customers aspects, the high variation may needs the customer not to buy the items for the companies again, or need to the customer to make the purchasing decisions. So this is another time aspects I want to introduce here. And for the flexibility, actually I have already introduced, like we have two types, flexibility, the design and the volume. So we need to focus on both of these two sides. Not only focus on the ability to change the number of the orders, the change over time for the assembly or for the production, but also focuses on the design flexibility. Are you able to produce multi choices to for customers to satisfy the requirements for different customers? So this is the design flexibility. And for the innovation and learning, innovation is the ability to create new and unique goods. And the learning is about create, acquire, and transfer knowledge. Can you apply what you have learned, what you have knew to your operations? This is the learning. And as listed in the table, a very important tools for the operations is to continuous improvement, to learn something for the current process, change some steps or change the materials or change the designing of the products or process or projects to improve the operations. And about the sustainability, I'd like to introduce you a thing we call TBL or 3BL. This is the triple bottom line. This is the bottom line for the sustainability. So the measurement of the sustainability actually not only focuses on the environmental factors, but also the social factors and the economic factors. So this is what I want to introduce to the sustainability, and you can find the detail the factors you may need to consider about the sustainability performance. The last one is about the productivity and efficiency. The operation efficiency, whenever we mention the operational efficiency, another word we need to focus on, which is utilization. So this is about the utilization of the equipments, the machines, or maybe the people. And the productivity, actually this is the quantifying number. This is the ratio of the outputs of a process to its input. So for productivity, this is how we compute productivity. The output is over the input. This is the productivity performance, the indicators we can obtain. And I have the examples here to illustrate how to calculate the productivity. The first productivity we call the neighbor. The neighbor productivity, because we care about all of the input and outputs focusing on the neighbor. So if 3 employees process 600 insurance policies in a week, and they work 8 hours per day, 5 days per week. And what is the productivity for question A here? We need to find the output. The output here is 600 policies. And for the A input, we have 3 employees, and each of them, they work 8 hours per day and 5 days per week. So they work 40 hours per week for an employee. And then we use 600 is divided by the 3 times 40, we have 5. 5 here is the number. But what we need to translate the results here, what kinds of conclusions we can obtain for here, is you should not forget the unit here, the policies per hour, which means the productivity, the labor productivity here is the employee can produce 5 policies per hour according to the information we have here. So whenever you have the numbers over there, do not forget your unit. And the unit is because of all of the units for each of the output and input. And let's take a look with the question B here. A team of workers make 400 units of a product and the value is 10 for each. And the cost 400 for labor and materials cost is 1000 and overhead cost is 300. So the total outputs according to the information we have here will be 400 times 10, which is 4000. And the unit will be dollars here. And for the total input here will be the 400 plus 1000 plus 300, the total cost. And the unit is still the dollars. So we have 2.35 without any units because the unit has been avoided while the outputs over the inputs. So this is the 2.35, which means if we consider for the value part, if we consider the multi-factor productivity here for this product, the productivity is 2.35. And take a look at the names here, the multi-factor, because except for the labor, this productivity also related to the raw materials and overhead. So this is not the productivity which focuses on only one factor. This is the productivity actually involve multi-factors together, so we call the multi-factor productivity. And I also provide another to solve problem here. And this is a practice for your alpha class, and the solutions is over there for this two problem, the different productivity. And in terms of the productivity, you may think about a thing. Why the higher productivity, the better? Maybe some of the people they think that they need to pursue a high productivity as possible and they can. But actually the high productivity is may not be a good thing. Think about the three things here, the three types over there. The first one, the order picking productivity. If the productivity is very high for the order picking productivity, but if they have a high inaccuracy of the orders, so even though you have a high productivity for that, but the quality, the accuracy is very low, the productivity is not good things. And the same as the customer service cost. So if you have a low customer service cost and then you have a high productivity for your customer service, but if you reduce your customer service cost while reducing the number of the employees or reducing of the necessary number of employees, or you just change your return policy that people may not be able to return their items, and the customer satisfaction will decrease also, even though you have a high customer service cost productivity. And for the return on investment, if for some companies, if they only pursue, like if they only focuses on, they have a high productivity on the return on investment, they may reduce some necessary investment on the market. So it may hurt the business growth. So what I want to talk about here is the productivity is not always a good thing. The high productivity is not always a good thing. We need to consider the reality. We need to consider what kinds of factors you have involved in your computation, what kinds of inputs you choose, what kinds of the outputs you choose, and why the numbers of the productivity you obtain, what kinds of things you may need to improve, even though you have a high productivity. So this is the things here. The step one, you need to recognize and find out what happened and take action. And another tools, except for the productivity, another tools I like to introduce is about the benchmarking. So the benchmarking is a tools to help the companies to find a model node to compare themselves with the company which performs the best in the same industry. So this is the benchmarking, and we have three types of benchmarking. The first is we call the competitive benchmarking. So you find a benchmarking in the same industry, and you compare yourself with those companies, and you may need to like you obtain the documentation for the process, and you compare yourself with those process and to find the steps you may need to improve. But the disadvantage here is like you may not be able to obtain the detailed information of the process of the operation strategy for the companies, for your competitors. So even though you know they perform the best in the same industry, you may not be able to obtain all the necessary information for you to improve your current operations. And this is the first types of benchmarking. The second type is non-competitive benchmarking, which means like the companies are not in the same areas, the same industries, but even though they are not in the same industries, but they still have like perform best in some areas. For example, the customer satisfaction or the delivery time in the supply chain network or the inventories management that performs best. So even though those two companies are not in the same areas, they can do something for the companies in other industry. This is what we call the non-competitive benchmarking. The next type is the internal benchmarking, which is like for some big company, the international company, they have the sub firms around the whole world, so they can have a benchmarking, which is the the sub companies in other locations, but they still like belongs to the same company. This is the internal benchmarking. And for the benchmarking process, the first step you need to define your aspects of the benchmarking you want to improve. So you need to define your goals, and you need to document the BIC, the best in class practice, which is the benchmarking company. So you need to document the detailed process, the detailed informations of their practice. And after that, you can develop an implementation strategy to improve your own process according your documentation for the BIC company. And um, except for the different types and the process to implement the benchmarking tools, and we have three pitfalls need to be avoided in terms of benchmarking. The first one is talks about the attitudes. The attitudes is like for some companies they are the best, they are in the best in the practice, they are in the best frontier in the industry. So they may feel that they always do the right things, or they don't need to make any changes. And for the rest of the companies, for some of them, they compare themselves with the benchmarking, and if they continuous improvement, they have continuous improvement for their operation process to become better and better and better and be the best. So for the companies who like who hasn't the attitude to face the changes, even though they are the first one, the best one, they may lose the chance to be growth and to share the market. So this is the first pitfalls. As a benchmarking, you may lose the advantage to continuous improvement, to continuous improving your process. And the second pitfalls is about the limitations. So actually, the benchmarking, the intensive benchmarking, the managers know their own limitations. Even though they have like 32 or 100 aspects of the different dimensions of the benchmarking, the real benchmarking company, they know, like they just like takes up one or two or three or five the dimensions as the benchmarking. They cannot perform best in every aspects. So this is about the managers who actively benchmark know their own limitations. The last one is about um, the essence of the benchmark. As I introduced the pitfall one, like the benchmarking may not have the idea about whether they need to be improved because they always do the best. So the essence of the benchmarking is copying the best practice for others. So this is what the last pitfalls for benchmarking. Try to be the second place, not the first one. And the last two, I'd like to introduce about the measurements, about the productivity, the performance is the total cost. So not all of the companies consider total cost when they want to develop a process or when they want to introduce the new equipment or construct a new plants or others. They only focus on the price for the materials, for the neighbors, for the equipment, for the machines, but they are not enough. They are not the total costs. So whenever you make a decision about improving your process, about to buy something new or to introduce something new, think about the total cost of ownership. And the figures here stands for the cost that you may need to think about, except for the purchase price, except for the transport cost, the duties. You also need to think about the heading cost, the carrying cost. If you need to store them, you need to store your materials, the items in the warehouse, and you need to think about the cost for the planning, purchasing, and internal. And also, you need to think about more than that. If you buy a new equipment, you may need to think about the future cost for operating, and also the field figures, general administration service. So not only focuses on the purchase price, this is the cost, the direct cost when you want to buy something, but also think about other ownership costs it may happen. And this is the equations about how to compute the total cost of ownership. And except for the possible cost for the ownership, take a look with the arrows here. So the bottom lines here are the easy to identify for the cost. For example, the detail price, the direct price. So about the purchase price and the transport cost, the duties, they are easiest to identify. But if we take a look at the above side here, the cost over there actually are more difficult to type to purchase. So this is the total cost of ownership. This tool tells us whenever you want to make a decision, you need to focus on not only the direct price, the acquisition cost, but also the total cost of ownership. So you need to consider other ownership costs, the deposit costs, and others. And this is a figure shows the total supply chain cost. So for the raw materials delivered to the suppliers, and this is we also call the supplier, and to the finished goods assembly. This is the manufacturing staff, and to deliver to the distributor, the warehouse, or the retainers or others, and deliver to the retainers and to the market. So this is the whole supply chain network, and you may need to consider all of them, the total supply chain costs. And the next thing I want to introduce is a tool which is not introduced in the textbook, but I want to introduce to you. This is decision making tools, but considering for the performance measures. So this is how to use this one. This is called performance matrix. So this is a table that allows people to rate an alternative according to several performance criteria. And what do you need to do if you want to use the performance matrix? All of the criteria should be scored on any scale, but you need to keep the same scales to all of the criteria you consider about. And then you give a the weights. So for each of the criteria you give a weight. If this performance is more important than others, then the weight should be higher than others. So this is you give a score for each of the criteria as the weights, but make sure that the total weights equal to 100, or you can use 1 or 1000, but you just need to make sure the total weight should be 1%, 100%. And then you use the weights times the scores you gave to each criteria and sum all of them, and you will have a final points for the product, for the things you want to analyze. So for example, here is a performance criterion table which shows the different performance you care about, and the weights for each of them, and the score. The score in general is for the 1 to 10, and 1 stands for worst, and 10 stands for the best. And this is actually a new thermal storage air conditioner. So you need to compare, you need to calculate the weighted score here for this new product. And if you want to make a decision about whether you should introduce this new product to the market, to the customers, then you have the final scores here. And if you already have a product whose score is 800, and if you have the 750 for this new conditioner, and 750 is less than 800, so the firm should not pursue making the air conditioner here. And where the 750 comes from, as have mentioned, you use the weights times the scores for each criteria, and you have a weighted score for each criteria, and you sum all of them together, and you will be able to have 750. So for these tools, like, it's just to help you to analyze whether you need to make a decision to buy something new or to introduce something new to the market if you already have a current one. So this is the comparison. You can calculate the performance scores, the weighted performance scores for each of the choice, and then you can compare them and you choose the highest one as your choice. So this is about these tools, about how to make decisions according to the performance. And I also provide you another like the examples here, the practice. So and provide you the results here. So before you take a look at the results, try to do the practice by yourself first. And the next several slides here talks about the first learning objectives I have mentioned. The people performance. So the cross-trained workers, the employees, the teams, and all the things about like the leadership, empowerment, cultures. So all of the PowerPoints here talks about the reading materials you need to read by yourself for the first subtopics about the people performance. And the last thing I want to introduce is another balance scorecard. So this is how to manage the performance in operations, and this tools actually consider four measurement dimensions: the customer expectations, the operational and the future capability, and the financial performance. So they think about the four dimensions over there: the customer expectations, the financial, the innovation, the internal business perspective. This is the operations one. So while using this scorecard here, the manager may have an idea about like the benefits. They may be able to obtain the 4K benefits, which are the communicates top manager's vision, the next behavior to strategy, the promotes future capability development, the imposes disciplining respectively. So this is why manager apply the balance scorecard to analyze the different performance in different dimensions here and to obtain the knowledge, the information they need. So this is all the stuffs I want to introduce for topic 3 here.